Hey everyone, it is Jeanette, and we are back with Untamed and Unapologetic. And today I have the fabulous Miss Katie with us. This woman is spectacular. I've been following her on Facebook for maybe the past 3 or 4-ish years. I don't even know how I came across you, but I did. And you have done so many amazing things. So introduce yourself to our audience, tell them who you are, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. I just want to say, I don't know how I connected with you either, but your energy in starting this podcast is exactly why I follow you. So thank you for having me on the show today. My name is Katie K. May. I'm a therapist in the Philadelphia area. I own a group practice with multiple locations. We specialize in working with high risk teens. I am a two-time author, wrote a book for parents of teens with self destructive behaviors. I have a book coming out in July for the therapist facing program for treating teens with self destructive behaviors. And I teach and train on that topic all over the world. So I'm jazzed about talking about it wherever I can.
That I'm gonna have to get that book for my therapist here in practice.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I think so many times, like, we'll have teens that come in and it's so hard to work sometimes when we don't have, like, the buy-in from the whole community. Like, I always feel like you need to get connected with everyone in order to help them feel safe and move forward.
I agree. And that's a big part of why I talk about what I talk about is like the whole system needs to be involved in making changes, not just the teen in isolation.
Exactly, and I think a lot of young therapists that are coming out don't know how to connect well with maybe
Mhm.
community, or maybe they never taught us. Like in my book, I talk about all the things that they never taught us in grad school, and there's just so many things that you don't know until you get there and hit a wall, and you
Mm.
have parents calling you like, "Where's my teen's progress? Like, what are they doing? I don't see any changes," and then you have to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I love that you have that everything that you didn't learn in grad school. I want to add your second book title that I'm going to give to you right now is like all the things they made you afraid to do in grad school. Cause I think I see that a lot in training new therapists, like terrified of any kind of self disclosure or anything like that. But to your point about working with parents, I remember when I first started as a therapist, and I always worked with teens and kids. And I had this parent come in and question me, and not in an inappropriate way, just basically like, what are your credentials? How long have you been doing this? Asking the question, can you help my child? But I was so new to the field and so young that I felt insecure. I was crushed inside and I felt almost like I had to defend myself. I answered appropriately outwardly, but it really was that moment of recognizing that I didn't have the confidence, structure, or skills with working with parents. And so from that point forward, I used to do this little trick where I would wear a blazer when I was going to have a parent session because for me it was like this, well now I look more like an adult. So I just thought that was funny like I kind of like cosplayed my way into confidence with the population.
I love that. That is so true. We also are like an intern training program here in my practice.
Mhm.
Interns that come in and like we start preparing them, and we actually have protocol to involving the parent with our
We do
teams now
too. Yeah.
because you have to, and then
You
kind
have
of
to require
coaching.
it, right?
And then coaching them on how to do that. But they leave with so much value because I mean I didn't have that.
Right. Right. So they know right from the start how to do it. And I think holding that line, which I learned also that we had to require for them to do it, it really empowers them to learn the right skills to include the whole family. And I think treatment outcomes are so much better when we can teach the family how to reinforce changes and model new skills at home too.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we even get school counselors involved and like the school and everything. Like it's necessary.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, let's turn this convo about you because a lot of times what I've found, and this is probably true for you too, when we choose the population that we want to work with or the topics that we want to work with, it's because of something in our own lives and something we've been working on personally or want to make a change in. What's yours? What's your story?
Yeah, I struggled as a teenager. I self harmed for the first time when I was 14. And after a few false starts, my dad landed on a therapist that he felt good about. So I look back on it now and I think, I was a teenage girl being raised by a single father. And the therapist that he chose for me to continue with was a male therapist. I didn't have a mom in my life. And so now I had another male in my life. And not just a male Jeanette, another male named Bob, just like my dad was named Bob. So I had all of these voices in my life that were supporting me, lack of maternal figure. So that was one big struggle that I had. But throughout my therapy as a client, as a teenager, I got a lot of support, a lot of warmth from the therapist that I was seeing, but I never really got the tools to target the self harm behaviors. And so I went from being a teenager who self harmed to being an older teenager and young adult who abused substances. And by the time I graduated college, I had a really dangerous drug addiction. Despite having a full time job, putting myself through college, having a 3.8, like on the outside, I was very functional. Or maybe I was fooling everyone. I was at least accomplishing alongside of this very dangerous and life threatening drug addiction. So that's my starting point. I have a turning point, but I'll pause there to tell you like that's what got me to start thinking about where I am today.
I think a lot of women or kids out there in general, I just see it so much in women. Like we are functioning depressed people and we function very well, whether it's
Mhm.
through like a substance that we use or through medication or through other things, addictions.
Mhm.
It we use that in order to keep going and to mask what's actually happening inside.
I agree with that so much, and I wanna, like, disclose that I'm still a very functioning depressed person. I have PMDD, and so I go through these cycles of really intense depression, and I think now, like, I have very healthy outlets. I work out, I work a lot, so I still have my coping skills. They're not self-destructive or dangerous, but I talk a lot about this idea of living with depression. I have a teenager who also lives with depression. I have a lot of chronically suicidal and depressed clients. And yes, we talk about coping. Yes, we talk about hope and getting better. But I do think there's something to be said for being someone who lives with depression and learns how to make space for it as a part of their everyday routine and relationships.
Yeah, no, I talk about that too with my clients. I have my own forms of depression that come in and they creep in so many different ways, right? And
Mhm.
a lot of the time like when it does creep in, it's usually around certain times of the year, traumatic events that have happened in the
Yeah.
past. And when they creep in, I literally have learned to yell at myself. Like I get
Mm.
up from the couch and I'm like, you are not depressed. You are a leader. You can move.
Mm.
You can get up and start walking even though you don't want to.
Yeah, that's the hardest part.
Yeah. And I find that like that is the hardest part to start just
Mhm.
getting up, just
Mhm.
moving that foot in front of the other one. Like that can be a struggle.
A total struggle. I have a note in my phone, it's like my depression SOP, and it says things like, "You know you feel better after you move. You know you feel better when you've gotten sunlight on your face." And so it's those reminders of that very first step is it almost feels like you're moving through water. It feels so hard, but once you get there, like, at least I need the reminder that I feel better on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So tell me a little bit more about your depression then. Like where
Mhm.
did it come from? I think I was just born with mine to be completely honest.
Mhm.
Like it's just generational trauma. Um
Yeah.
but where did yours come from?
I would say it's a little bit of both of nature and nurture. So I remember being 6 years old and I have journals, stacks of journals at this point that started when I was 6 years old. And I remember riding my bike and making up songs about there's one that I still remember. It's called Thinking About the Troubles I've Had. So I wrote it when I was 6 and I'll sing it in the shower sometimes. So making up songs is a way of processing my emotions, writing poems, crying while I'm lying next to my bed, writing poems. And I don't remember at that point anything being particularly wrong. I just think I was always biologically sensitive. And so I take that part of me that has just always been so in touch with my emotions and really finds beauty in that process. Like it's not all sad for me, it's very fulfilling for me to then be raised up into an environment where my mom left when I was 10. So I had all of my adolescent years without a mom and a dad who had no skills to parent, let alone a teenage girl like me. And so there was a lot of invalidation, a lot of you're too sensitive, you're making a big deal about this. I was just joking, along with just the invalidation of nobody acknowledging how hard it was for me to not have a mom. Nobody talked about my mom. They just moved on with life as if everything was regular. And for me, it was not at all regular. And so it was the messages from my environment, the internalization that there was something wrong with me, and then just this biological predisposition that depression has always been like riding shotgun in my car. It's always been there alongside me.
Yeah. When was it that you noticed that there was like I guess, a disconnect from like, you knew your mom wasn't there, but when did
Mhm.
you know that you needed to have some sort of figure, female figure that wasn't there?
That's an interesting question because I don't know that there was ever this like overt realization that I needed a female figure. I had four aunts growing up, and I had different periods in my life where one of them was maybe there for me a little bit more, or I was a little bit closer to. And I think I just kept going. I think I just ignored, I masked it all with substances, with self destruction, with acting out. And at that point, I blamed my dad so much more than my mom. So I don't even think I was thinking about like needing a maternal figure. I think I was just so angry and so shut down.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. It just makes me think, right? Because you were talking about how you realized that, I mean, there was no woman figure in your life, right? And you had your
Yeah.
dad so angry with him and you weren't sure why. And then you just used things to kind of cope and mask all the emotions that you were feeling because you didn't know where they were coming from.
Hmm.
Brings me back to like putting together like our pieces of our life, right?
Hmm.
At some points in our life, maybe we don't understand all the pieces or the emotions that are coming with all the pieces. But whether
Hmm.
it was now, like in your adulthood, or whether it was back then, there was something that was missing.
For sure. I think my turning point of when things shifted and when I started to actually have the space to process what was missing and what do I need was a surprise pregnancy when I was 26. So I was deeply entrenched in this substance using world and I was making a lot of poor choices. And I found out I was pregnant and I was scared shitless. It was terrifying for me. I was living at home. I had a drug addiction. Like nobody trusted me. People were carrying their purses around the house because I was making very poor decisions. And then all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, there's there's something in me that's bigger than the pain inside me. That's more important than that." And it really was. I know it's not this way for everyone, but for me it was this moment, this catalyst of if I'm going to bring this child into the world, and that was the decision that I made, that I need to break the generational chains of dysfunction that I was raised up into that were not just my dad, but my grandmother and these extended family members that were, for me, very harmful to interact with. It was my responsibility to heal, to become whole, to not repeat the patterns of my family so that I could be there for my child. And I think for me, it was less about like, what was I missing and more about what do I need to do so that my child isn't missing these same things? What do I need to do so that I can parent differently?
But whenever you come to that point, right, where you're faced with some sort of, like you said, turning point, you were pregnant.
Hmm.
It was time. It was something was happening inside of you. You weren't exactly sure where all the things were coming from, but you were
Hmm.
changing as a human in
Yeah.
that moment. Talk to me more about that.
I've tried so many times to distill down and figure out what is it exactly that I did that got me from this person who was making really poor choices, dangerous choices, to being who I am today. And so I'm going to try and be articulate, but I don't know if it's going to work out that way. We'll see.
All right.
So I had the luxury of time because I had just gotten laid off from a job, so I was collecting unemployment, had gone on some job interviews, but I was also pregnant, so there was like a disconnect in being able to start a career at that time for me. And so I was really just spending a lot of time on my own, taking a lot of walks, again, journaling a lot, writing a lot, reflecting a lot. And something that I've noticed is a quality of mine is that I am really good at crystallizing what my vision and future will look like. And so I do think that that was a big part of it, is that it wasn't at that point, and I have been to a lot of therapy since then and processed a lot of the past, and I can talk about that. But at that point in my life, it was more about what am I moving towards? So, one piece of this is that as someone who was in active addiction, I had been to rehab multiple times. And I knew how that worked, is that it was like a lot of sitting around talking about the one thing that you can't do. And a lot of people white knuckling through life, just talking about, I really wish I could do this thing, but my life sucks because I can't. And that never resonated with me. It never worked for me. It never resonated with me. But this idea of imagining a future where I was raising a child, where I was independent, where I was a business owner of some sort. I didn't know I was going to be a therapist at that point, but where I was a business owner because I know I'm unbossable. I can't work for others. So, really imagining all of those pieces again and again and again, visualizing, writing about, thinking about, and then imagining the steps that I needed to take along the way. And so, what happened was that vision of the future, the beauty of it, the feelings of connectedness and pride and love for my child and what I wanted to raise them up into was so much more powerful than the pain of what I was trying to escape. So there was this like shift at some point, and I can't pinpoint it, but it was from like I'm not running away from something anymore. I'm running towards something, and it just felt different, and it like clicked into place, and it just kept going from there.
Yeah. I hear a lot of like creativity. Like you were a creative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
always.
Always. Even from when you were a young child and 6 writing poetry. Like I don't remember what I did at 6. Like that's amazing. But for you to have that recollection and know, even from such a young age, that you had the ability to create a safe space
Mhm.
through being creative. I find that whenever we help ourselves try to figure that out, or when we feel lost, or when you are coming to like that turning point, like you talked about, and not knowing
Mhm.
exactly where it like switched and your perspective switched from like the world happening to me versus the world happening for me.
Yeah.
And um, I don't know. I just find that when you are a creative, it's a little bit
Mhm.
less challenging, but it's still challenging. But when you talk
Sure.
about the visualization, was having that visualization that you're running towards something
Mhm.
makes it less challenging, maybe?
That makes sense. I mean, when you said that I was able to create a safe space, I felt that like, because
Mhm.
it hit me in this way that I think I was the only one that was able to create my safe space for myself. I didn't have that from an external source. But when I tell you I visualized, like I remember putting together my kids' nursery and
Yeah.
sitting in the rocking chair and just like imagining what it was going to feel like to have them and the peace and the love. And so like I was really just embedding myself in this new life over and over and over again. And I know it's not I'm oversimplifying. Like there was a lot of pain
It's a
and
lot.
hardship that I also processed during that time, a lot of integration and realizations and there was a lot and there's a lot it's been almost 18 years and I'm still processing those things and it's still work, but that I think was really the guiding like the north star of it all.
Yeah, it's almost like there was an identity shift. Like you went
Yeah.
from this young girl that was creative and maybe had big emotions, not exactly sure where it came from, to
Mhm.
another version of a young girl where you didn't have a mom, you were angry
Mhm.
with your dad, and then at this point, you were pregnant. And I always find that like if we're pregnant or if we're not pregnant, right? You take an identity shift of some time around
Mhm.
that time in your life in your 20s, mid 20s, early 30s. There's like an identity shift. You went from it not
Mhm.
being just about like what's the world doing to me and how this life sucks to
Mhm.
I have something to look forward to.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it was.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times during those identity shifts, like they can be a little chaotic and we might not understand them because there's a lot of big thoughts and emotions happening at that same time. And I believe that we kind of have identity shifts like throughout life, even as teens, right?
Sure.
And all of these big things that happen to us can lead us down one of two roads. And you chose a different road that you were used to.
I think you nailed it. Like that's exactly how it played out for me is that I just recognized who I needed to be and then I kept moving towards that person because the alternative was probably death. Like, it was, if I kept making the choices that I was going to make,
Mhm.
really bad things would have happened. And that wouldn't have been a place to bring a child into if we had even gotten to that point.
Yeah, it was a complete change in you. I'm gonna become this new person that believes
Hmm.
these things and does these things because I made a choice to go this way versus
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about the whole, like what you're pinpointing in this process of becoming, like embodying a new person, is, and I talk about this in my work too, like when you create a life that is so worth living, when you create a life that you really want to be alive within and that works for you and the people work for you and the things you're doing work for you, like old self-destructive choices become incompatible with that. So there's not ever a day where I think about using a substance or, harming myself. It's just not part of my blueprint for life anymore. Like it's not like I'm white knuckling. It's not like I'm thinking about it. It's not like I'm falling into old coping patterns. They're just not part of who I am anymore.
there's always a moment for me where it's telling me, Jeanette, like, just stay in bed today. Like, it's gloomy outside. Like, you don't have to go to
Mhm.
work. But it's having to understand that if I do that behavior, it's going to funnel me down this road that I might get
Mm,
stuck in
mhm.
versus reminding myself, like, hold on, this isn't you.
Yeah.
You got to do these things. How are you gonna get to be the person that you are wanting to reach? Like, getting to that
Mhm.
potential, you know?
I think there's nuance in between that. 'Cause what I'm hearing about the way that you cope is that you manage yourself out of this depression and that it keeps you going because of your identity as a leader. And I think
Mhm,
that works. And I think for myself, I
mhm.
have I have can't leave the house days. I have days where I stay in bed a lot, but I've also organized my life so that it works that way. I only go to the office 1 day a week. I only have face to face meetings typically 2 days a week. And the rest of my time, I've organized it so that I can write or so that I can lay in bed and make social media videos or so that I can spend several hours at the gym. And that is definitely a privilege. And I've worked very hard to get to this point in my life, but I don't find myself having to, like, manage myself out of depression because I've built my life to work for my depression. It's something that I'm trying to teach my almost 18-year-old as well, who has a very similar profile to me. Things like 9 to 5 jobs, things like, having to leave the house every day, that's never gonna be able to work for my nervous system and how I move through the world. And so I just think, like, making a life that works for the profile that you have is really helpful, so you don't have to beat yourself up out of it.
Yeah, it's almost like we have to craft it, right? You've talked to us a lot about some of the things that have happened and how you've managed them and changed who you were. Give
Mhm,
us I guess, the finale. Like, you had the turning point, that happened. What came next?
mhm. What came next was that I kept evolving into new versions of myself. So there's of course with all of us way more to the story. I had a child, I continue to grow, I continue to process my challenges, but if we're wrapping this up, right? If we're putting a bow on where things are at this point, allowing myself to move towards something and away from pain and recognize that that was my responsibility no matter how many people had hurt me by history was empowering for me because it helped me to realize that I had so much more agency in creating the life that I wanted and healing from the hurt. And that no matter how much I wanted the people in my life to, and still do want the people in my life to be able to say, that was really hard for you. I know how much that hurt. I know we never talked about the things that happened and you felt like you were crazy because you were so upset and nobody else acknowledged it. Nobody did that then. Nobody has done that now, but it no longer weighs on me because I've taken the responsibility for healing and moving away from the life that hurt me and into the life that I love so much now.
I love that you said that. You took the responsibility.
I had to.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times that's what we lose sight of, that we have a choice.
Mhm.
What would you say to our listeners? Like, if you could give them words of wisdom. They might be going through a struggle right now. They might wonder if they should go right or left, right?
Mhm.
In those turning points and in those moments where we have the opportunity to become someone new or
Mhm.
learn new behaviors or rewrite stories, what would you tell them? How would you guide them?
Yeah, I have a metaphor for you. For me, it very much feels like you've been rolling a boulder down a hill for 100 years, and there's this really nice groove in the hill. So it easily rolls down that groove, and it's not so hard to push that boulder at the top of the hill. But if you want to make those changes, if you're at this turning point where something could be different, it's going to take a while to create a new groove in the hill. It's going to take a while for it to feel easy to push the boulder down. So it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel strenuous and hard and painful, but you'll never create the new groove if you don't start and try pushing it down the new part of the hill. I hope that makes sense. The idea of like we have these patterns that are so automatic, and of course they make sense because it's how I survived. I survived by doing things that were self-destructive. It's how I was able to get through a really difficult and traumatic period. And so of course changing that was going to be hard, but if I never started to change it, I would have never gotten to the end of changing it. So we just have to get through that messy middle to get to the other part that is really worth it.
Now, let's say we had a parent on here listening to this and
Mhm.
they find gold in this because you said a lot of great things, especially about teens. Um, how would you coach a parent to talk to their teen about the messy places that we feel that we get into in those times of life?
Yeah, I think for teenagers especially, this is really important for parents to understand that the behavior that you see on the surface, if it's self-destructive, if it's dangerous, oftentimes it's the solution for them. You see it as the problem and it is problematic because it could be harmful or dangerous, but for them it's the thing that their brain has come up with to help them cope with something really big and painful and difficult, as if they're on fire inside, and this is the way that their brain has figured out to help them put the fire out. So if a parent is wanting to talk to their teen about something like this, we always want to start with validation, with acknowledging, like, if you're engaging in self-harm or if you're thinking about suicide or using substances, you must be really struggling, or there must be something else going on that led you to this point, and I'm here for you and I want to understand how we got here so that I can support you and help you. So less judgment, more validation. I'm a big fan of direct communication in the sense of just like observing and describing what it is we see so that we can open the channel of communication with our teens.
I think that's really valuable because there's so many parents that just feel lost
For
sometimes when it
sure.
comes to their teens. It's like we almost forget that we were once one of them. And I find that that's like the easiest thing for me to do is like get
Me
into their shoes.
too. Yeah, it's funny, like, a long time ago, we ran a parenting group and somebody asked that question. One of the facilitators was like, "Who remembers being a teen?" And nobody raised their hand. I was like, "I do, so clearly." But, like, I do think it's hard for some folks to tap into remembering that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. Any final words or any messages that you would like to give, whether it's to the therapist, the parent, the teen, or someone who just happened to stumble across us?
Yeah, I think I'll wrap up with kind of summarizing where we started is like if you're in a point of struggle, you go first. You decide what it is that you want. You process the emotions. You keep working toward it, and the world isn't always going to be kind and helping you in that process. And I'm sorry, and that's hard. And I want you to get what you want. I'm rooting for you, so keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. That's a good little wrap up because I feel like every one of us has a struggle. Nobody is perfect. We all
No.
have our things, right? How can they reach you if they wanted to know more about you, learn about your book, website, practice?
Yep, you can find all of my projects and brands at kdkmay.com or on social medias at kdkmay.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. So glad to have you on. Have a
Thank you.
great day, everyone. See you next time on Untamed and Unapologetic.